Great. Thank you. Thanks, Amber. Hi, everybody. Um, my guess is we'll have maybe a couple more people popping in. Hopefully we will. But if not, we'll have a nice intimate conversation among ourselves. So I'll start off by introducing myself, and then I want to pass things over to Marisela in just a moment. But I'm Hadi, and I am the CEO of Boldly Speaking, a company that's transforming the experience of underestimated people in the workplace. And I'm a Latina speaker, an ERG coach, an employee resources group coach, and I'm a best-selling author. So I want to start off today's conversation by saying that what we're going to be talking about today is inspired by an upcoming book that I'm writing. So yeah, that it's pretty exciting. It's an exciting time. The book's at the editor, and so I'm finished with the manuscript. And anyway, that's kind of the conversation today is going to be rooted in that book and the message of that book. And it is meant to be a brave space for everyone who is here. So hopefully y'all are going to feel safe here and comfortable talking and sharing and asking questions. I'm going to be talking about the lessons in my life and how I am applying them to the current moment. So that's the context of today's conversation. I want to acknowledge right out of the gate that what works for me might not work for you. So I'm sharing what I've learned in the hope and in the spirit that it sparks some reflection for you and maybe offers you, some inspiration. But I encourage you definitely to take what you find helpful and leave the rest. So with that, I will pass the mic to my conversation partner, Marisela, and give her an opportunity to introduce herself.
Thanks, Hattie. First off, thanks for inviting me to be part of this conversation. Honestly, I've been looking forward to this since we talked a few days ago, weeks ago. I have no idea what time means. Um, I've been looking forward to this because I think you have some very practical tips that will be helpful for people, and I can't wait for them to listen. So a little bit about me. Hi, I'm Marisela Herrera. I am really happy to be here. I'm a community builder, a strategist, a podcaster, most recently an educator. I've spent over a decade leading teams and building companies, particularly focused on helping people come together in connect in meaningful ways, everything with the hope that we can make the world a little bit better.
Yeah.
Um, Most recently, I was the CEO of the largest community for professional women, and currently I teach entrepreneurship, innovation, and design thinking at the college level. So passionate about the topics we're going to be discussing. I am one of the first to acknowledge that I am a work in progress, and I think most of us will understand that. I'm still figuring this out and learning and evolving and just trying to keep my head above water while navigating this storm situation world that we're living in. And that's why I love these conversations, because I think we can all learn from each other and support each other as we go through this. So again, thank you. I know we're a small group, so I was gonna ask everyone to do a waterfall, which means in the chat, can you write one word that says how you're feeling right now? But don't send it. We'll all send it together when I count to three. And the idea is to just get a sense of how the group is holding up today. Okay? So write down your word in the chat and we can send it. 1, 2, 3, hit send. Oh, conflicted, few hopefuls. Hattie and I were the hopeful ones, so hopefully you join us.
It's a good thing we're the ones talking then.
Hopefully you join us on this side of the boat. Anxious and uncertain. I feel that. Broken, angry, focused, uncertain. I feel that. And I think spaces like this, communities like this, is where we can actually get to talk about these feelings and find ways to move from the uncertain to at least the hopeful and positive. So with that, let's start a little bit with the conversation. So, Hattie, as you and I were talking, the title of this chat is Unleashing Your Awesome. What does that mean to you, and why do you think it's so important right now?
Yeah. So I think I forgot to mention when I introduced myself, but I think it is an important part of the conversation and maybe implied, but I'll just put it out there to make sure everyone knows that I identify as a Latina and a woman of color. So I'm gonna be talking about things today from that point of view, from that lived experience. And I would say that, so right out of the gate, I feel like lots of Latinas and women of color are not encouraged to unleash their awesome. In fact, quite the opposite. I feel like we're often silenced and dismissed and ignored. We don't get our flowers. People don't acknowledge our contributions. They go unnoticed. We get paid less for often doing twice the work. And in spite of all of this, I still feel called to remind women like me to show up for themselves. That's like my life's work. And that's why I'm here and that's why I'm talking about this topic. So, um, I think there's always going to be reasons that we will give ourselves for not stepping into our power and unleashing our awesome. And I know that personally, I have sometimes felt paralyzed, and especially later, I'm sorry, not later, recently now, I feel like, I get paralyzed, I get fearful, I get worried, I get anxious. And I work very hard to move past those feelings because I want to focus on bringing my skills and my talents to the fore and using them for good. So when I think about what unleashing your awesome means, I feel like it has to do with like being a vulnerable leader, being a truth teller, being a disruptor. I think a lot of people on this call would probably identify as being a disruptor. People who show up into spaces unapologetically. They know what they stand for. They're not easily shaken or broken or like, they're kind of standing firm in their values and their purpose. So I think that to me is what unleashing your awesome is. And I also feel unleashing your awesome looks in some other ways too, because those are people probably like you and me and people in this room where we're in roles and positions that are very visible and we're like we're meant to be disruptors. But there are other people that, maybe their job is to support families and communities. They're making children feel safe, like somebody like a teacher. There's people who are, their job is just to listen to people in the margins and then try to advocate for them. And all of those people are also unleashing their awesome just in a different way. They maybe their job is not to be an advocate, be disrupting, but their job is to be an advocate. And I feel like that's also part of unleashing your awesome. It's just like leaning into the thing that you're called to do. So, more important than everything, as I think about the current moment and what it means to unleash your awesome, I think about how, you know, I don't want the amount of work that is in front of us to distract us from focusing on the one or two or three areas where we can really make a difference. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this angle of unleashing your awesome.
I love it. I mean, I heard you say things like being vulnerable, truth teller, showing up unapologetically. And I think the operative phrase that you used, which was in your own way. And I think that's so important, right? Like we are so different in our talents, in our gifts, in our way of seeing the world. I mean, the people in this call really understand that, right? Like we understand the power of those diverse talents and just keeping them to yourself because the world is hard, because things are not the way you want them, or because you're scared, does a disservice to yourself and to others in any which way, right? Like it can be the
1,000%.
smallest thing. And you mentioned as you were talking about unleashing your awesome that going forward, right? Like that we have work in front of us and we have to do it and in different ways. So to me, that sounded a lot as the word steadfast, right? remaining steadfast. Can you share a time where you had to dig deep and kind of stay steadfast in the face of resistance? What got you through it?
Yeah. So I have a whole chapter in my upcoming book called Steadfast y Positiva, which translates to steadfast and positive. This is a core value of mine, to remain steadfast. I worked at a school, and that was one of the values of the school. And all the children would walk around and you're like, tell, what are the values? And all the children, even the ones in kindergarten, knew what the word steadfast meant. So that word really means a lot to me, has a very important place in my vocabulary and how I kind of show up. But I think, going back again to how I identify, I strive to be steadfast and positive in a world that I don't think wants me to be or expects me to be. Like I feel Latinas, and you're Latina too, Maricela. I don't know if anybody else identifies that way. We are often expected to kind of go with the flow, stay in our place, this whole calladita
Te ves
culture,
más bonita.
you look nice when you're quiet, just stay quiet. And so in light of that, so I already know that that's what is expected of me, but I'm kind of pushing through that and saying, okay, well, I'm still gonna find a way to be steadfast in the face of, whatever your expectations are and whatever my realities happen to be. I think about a time, getting laid off is probably something that a lot of people can relate to these days, because there's so many people losing their jobs, involuntarily, like, being laid off. I was the head of equality at a major tech company. That was my most recent corporate role. And, when I got laid off, I immediately started looking for work, and I wasn't finding any. There's, the market was not very good, and it still isn't. And I had to remind myself of something that's very important. And this has to do with my Latina upbringing, and maybe yours too, Marisela. There's a saying in Spanish: "Lo que es para ti, nadie te lo quita." And I'll translate it to English for those of you who don't speak Spanish, which is kind of like, what's meant for me is not going to pass me by. And I feel like that the spirit of that is what keeps me steadfast. That vibe is very comforting to me, because it allows me to rest. It allows me to be at peace. It allows me to not um despair. I don't despair because I know something's coming for me, and it's going to find me. So what is my job besides, not freaking out and not despairing, because that's the propensity, is to go that path. What I do is I start getting ready. I start
Mm,
preparing for what's coming. So as an example, I think about, I started a business. I'm building community. I'm part of a lot of communities, and I'm a leader in those communities. I'm developing content. I'm coaching young people. I'm writing a book. I'm taking a nonprofit course that's preparing me to be a leader in the social impact space. I just signed up for a storytelling course. So for me, what I do in these moments of it's not going my way, and what am I supposed to be doing right now? Like, tell me, like, what the universe, somebody give me an answer. I just stay ready. And that's a very common term, I think, in our community: stay ready. And that's what I do. And then that allows me to be steadfast and at peace in those moments where, my inclination would be to just be like, ah, get me out of here. This is not a good place to be. It's scary. Uncertainty is not fun for anybody. I'm sure I don't, and I'm an anxious person. So then
mm.
that kind of adds a complexity to all of it. But that's what allows me to stay at peace, and it's very powerful.
You made me think of the notion of luck is really, or success is luck plus preparation,
Mhm.
right? So that idea of things that are meant for you will not pass you by, but you need to be prepared. Also, all the list of things that you just mentioned that you're doing just made me very tired, but that's you.
I know that is me, very, very on brand for me.
Um, but you did say, like, I don't know other people in the room, and feel free to put your hand up or write in the chat, but I recently have what I would say kind of gone under a rock. Like I've been trying to stay off social media. I've been trying to be very mindful about what I'm consuming in terms of information because I know that for me, it will it will really affect my groundedness, my motivation to actually show up. And the things you're saying to be steadfast, to be prepared, to be moving forward, you need to have quite the strong motivation. What keeps you motivated, grounded, and I'll throw in there hopeful as well, since that was the word that we both used at the start
Hmm.
of this chat.
Yeah, I would say that it comes from a lot of different places, just like, to start with, like what motivates me, what keeps me inspired. Because I have the same problem as you, Marisela. Um, I'm also consuming a lot of things that are are harmful, and I have to just like acknowledge that because that's not going to change anytime soon. I've noticed that things are bad, and then the journalists and the people online make it sound even worse because they want the clicks and everything. So like they're not helping. So it's
Mhm.
bad enough. Listen, it's bad enough, but they make it sound like the world is going to end every day. The sky's falling like every single day, all day, every day. So it's just like it's not sustainable.
Right.
And I feel like being intentional has helped me a lot in terms of like what I consume or what I do, even what activities I do. So like I definitely am taking more screen time breaks, for sure. I have moved away from a ton of social media sites. So like I got off of Facebook in 2016. I got off of Threads at the end of this election because I was like, it's a
Oh, I
wrap.
never
I
went
just
on.
can't anymore. Mark Zuckerberg declared whatever he declared around DEI. I said, okay, buy Instagram. So now I'm done with all the Mark Zuckerberg stuff. And I'm finding myself basically on LinkedIn and Substack. Those are the two spaces that I'm in right now that I feel like, it's kind of working for me. But you know, I'm also grounding myself to answer your question about what keeps me motivated and grounded. The motivation is my book right now because I'm like, I got to get this book into the world because this book is I'm hoping it's gonna change lives. That you got to be somewhat delusional if you're writing a book. So that's why my book is going to change lives. So I got to get that book out there. And my purpose is to empower people that are often overlooked. And I teach them skills and I help them to thrive. And I want to make them succeed in a world that often makes it very difficult for them to shine their light. That's my purpose. So that still motivates me every single day. No matter what's happening in the world, that's still my mission. And it's a mission that is still very much needed. Like, all the DEI programs that just went away are going to make it that much more difficult for underestimated people to thrive and do well whatever path they take. So, in spite of the heaviness and how overwhelmed I feel in these moments, I try to be more intentional and not allow myself to get distracted. And I think, like I said, I stay focused on my mission, on my purpose. I try to show up bravely and joyfully. Like that's like old school hottie. And that came from 1,000 years ago. I forget, I think it was Life's Little Instruction Book, which if y'all are old like me, it came out in like the 90s, I think. And one of Life's Little Instruction Book, it was just it was like a little book that had like just every page had a different instruction. And one of them was become the most positive and enthusiastic person you know. Become the most positive and enthusiastic person you know. And that was like, that spoke to me. That was like 21-year-old hottie. And here I am 30 years later, and I'm like, that's still what I want to be. I want to be the most positive and enthusiastic person in the room if I can be. And so I think staying motivated and grounded right now requires intentionality and focus. Those are the two things that I think are helping me with that.
Intentionality and focus. And I really appreciate those two words. I think that we need to be both of those things, right? If you are intentional of where you're putting your energy, you can actually move forward without just kind of spinning wheels and not being and trying to do everything for everyone and showing up for everyone and not doing it in a healthy way. Um, I had not heard of that book. I will look it up. However, I think if I had read To Be Positive, the most positive and enthusiastic person in the room, I would have closed that book and I would have put it to the side.
They had other
But
ones
that's
too that
me.
they had other ones. That one spoke to me, and I was like, how cool would it be to be the most positive and enthusiastic person? I don't know. It really spoke to me. I'm an ESTJ, so I don't know. I'm wired
Yeah,
a little bit different,
I'm on
but
the other side.
yeah, so I do feel like there probably would be another instruction that maybe would resonate with you. It has, I think, 100 and something instructions, so something for everyone, so to
I
speak.
want to check it out. But you just said something too that what I was gonna start with, which is you just said I'm an ENTJ, and you have mentioned
S,
this
S.
sorry, I'm the J. I'm an ENTS. And you said before, my purpose is to empower people, and I wrote it down, people who are overlooked. You've mentioned your core values. And so all of these things really, I think the core of it is just really knowing yourself, right? To be able to be motivated, to be able to be grounded, you have to know what works for you because it's so personal. And the only way you know what works for you is if you truly spend time trying to get to know yourself. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating how many people just don't. I don't think people in this room don't because of the work that we do, but it is, to me, it has been one of the things that I believe has made the biggest difference. Knowing, really getting to know yourself and know what works. Like I know the
Yes.
things that keep me grounded, and then they usually involve the people I love or some body movement. To me, that
Mhm.
is important. Um, so
Yeah, that self-awareness I think is very critical. Because you got to know both ends of it. You got to know what triggers you and
right.
how it makes you feel, and you're like, I don't want to feel that way. I hate like there was a time where I read this like horrible news article right before I went to bed, and then I like had horrible sleep, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was like, This ain't for me. I can't. This is not it." So I was like, okay, so I had to shut that down, and then I had to say, but what is it that feeds me, and what is it that makes me feel good? To your point, walking, listening to a podcast, reading, whatever it is that's going to give me the peace that I'm looking for. So it's the both. You have to be aware of the triggers and the where you can find the solace and the source of groundedness and, keeping you.
100%. 100%. And knowing up to what point, right? Like too, like there's another aspect of it when maybe you feel like things that are going to make you, I'll use myself as an example. Like I'm a runner, and running is a really good way for me to kind of maintain myself grounded. However, I can also overdo that. And I can also overextend myself because another thing that keeps me grounded is being connected with other people and being there for them. But it is very easy to burn out in any of the things you do, whether it is for the good or for the negative.
Mhm.
So how do you, what are some tips that you could share with us about keeping yourself from burning out? And I would throw in, because this is one of the things I have issues with, maintaining and setting boundaries.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. It's story time. I have some good stories.
Yay.
So I would say like, yeah, I'm listening to myself and I'm giving myself permission to be like, you don't have to go. You don't have to do the thing, whatever the thing is. And I'm not like that because I'm someone who I pride myself in being very dependable and very responsible. And if I say I'm going to do something, I like, sticking by that. And, for the most part, I'm going to push myself if I made a commitment. But there's some things where it's like, as an example, I was supposed to go to a conference the other day. Yeah, I wasn't a speaker at the conference. I was like, no, it's fine. I'm not going to go. I don't feel like I'm in the right mindset for it. I don't
Mhm.
want to be around people right now. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to sleep in, and I'm going to use the day to catch up with some stuff so I could just have an easier rest of the week. And I'll be honest with you, once I made the decision, I felt very much at peace. So I do feel it's like listening and also trusting, because you got to trust yourself that you're going to make the right decision. Because my head kept saying go to the conference because you already said you were going to go, and there was people you wanted to meet and you wanted to like hear certain topics, and it was like I did want to do all those things. And at the same time, my body was like, girl, don't go. So I had to really listen to myself and trust the me that was saying, stay home. It's like the angel and the devil. The angel was like,
Oh,
go to the conference. And the devil was like, stay home and rest. And I was like, I'm going to stay home. So I stayed home. And once I made the decision, I was 100% at peace. And I feel like it is important to like recognize that we're
mhm.
just not going to be able to do everything that is expected of us. I've come to terms with that because some days are going to be too hard, or sometimes we're just going to feel too tired or too like, drained. There's those moments where we feel very drained and just like it's just we don't have it in us. So we just have to give ourselves the permission to not do the thing we thought we were gonna do. And I'm meticulous about calendars. I have all my time filled. I do. So for those of you who worry about me, I do have times in the calendar that say rest. So I make sure I schedule in rest because that is so important. And like I say, walk or rest or eat lunch or whatever. I give myself an hour to do things all day so that I'm doing the things that I need to be doing. But yeah, but then I'm also proactive. Like I knew that January 20th was going to be a triggering day. And I said, you know what? Not only am I going to take that day off because it was already Martin Luther King's birthday. So I said, let me take that day off. And I put out of office, block my calendar for the next 2 days. I said, let me give myself the time if I need, if I'm okay and I want to talk to people, there'll be plenty to do and I can reach out to other people. But I didn't, I just blocked that. I gave myself that gift and I said, whatever happens after that, then we'll figure it out. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. And I want to talk a little bit about boundaries too, because I'm gonna go back to the Latinx community, which I am part of, and maintaining boundaries is not a thing we do very well, especially with family. There's this like expectation. It's a cultural thing, especially related to older family members like mama, papa, abuela, abuela. Like you just is like they win. Whatever fight you're gonna about to have with them, they're gonna win before you even
Not a
get to
fight.
it. And so I have worked very hard over the years to be better at this because I understood like pretty early on that I was not going to be successful at doing the things I wanted for myself and have the life I wanted if I allowed myself to get sucked into that. And I remember, I will never forget, I was in therapy and I was talking about Thanksgiving Day with the therapist. And I said, I forget what I said. I wished that they would just leave after dinner. And she's like, well, then why don't you just have dinner, make it a very nice dinner, and then say, okay, I'm so glad you came. And like, in other words, kick them out. Like just, you could create the boundary you want. You could have the life you want. Just be brave enough to like, let people know what your expectations are. So I really felt like, um, I have learned to be good at this. And I'll tell you what I did that I think this is something that I think people on this call might be able to resonate with quite a bit. The day after the election, I stepped down from 3 organizations that I volunteered with. And I dropped out of a bunch of WhatsApp groups that I also was part of. And I was like, I need to clear space in my life right now. This is the, I cannot, I pour into all of these spaces. And when I'm in a space, I show up fully and completely. And I'm like, I will not have the capacity to do this right now. So shut it down. I need to get rid of things. And I eliminated things that just I didn't feel they were adding value or they were not bringing me joy, or I just felt like they were taking more than I was able to give, or maybe they were taking more than they were giving me. Some spaces it's like you come and you like give and you get, but like I was like, that's not what's happening here. So I gotta like release this. And sometimes I know I've been guilty of staying in roles or even maintaining relationships with people out of a sense of obligation. That's a very, I don't know, that's how in my life it's like it's an obligation. Like I said, I'm very responsible, I'm dependable. I'm gonna, if I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. And then I just said no. I now I need to put myself first. And I feel like it's like that book, another book I'm gonna mention. This is not a new book either, but it's The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up with Marie
Mhm.
Kondo. She says like hold the thing. If it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it. I feel like that is kind of where I am at in my life as it relates to boundaries. If the thing is not giving me joy, if it's not a give and take, if it's not filling my cup, then it might have to be time to let it go and move on and then create space in my life for things that are more meaningful. I can focus on my book. I can spend time with people I love. And I'm still present, but I'm present in the spaces where I want to be present that like matter to me, that allow me to do my work. And yeah, and I'm okay with that, you know?
Goes back to self-awareness and knowing what really is going to fill your cup because, oxygen mask on first, right? Like if you're not okay, how can you be okay for anyone else? I found it really funny that you said, the angel was telling you go to the conference and the devil was saying stay home, where I would have completely said the
The
other way.
opposite way.
Right, right. The angel was telling me you sit down and rest, and the
Yes,
devil
you're
was telling
right.
me go out and do this thing.
I try not to have too much guilt. And I'm better at that too. Like there were times where I was like so guilty and felt so bad about like stepping away from something. And I agree with you that it should be the angel saying, stay home, take care of yourself, put yourself first.
Can you talk? I know this wasn't in the plan, but can you talk a little bit about how you've dealt with guilt and like what's helped you kind of shed that?
Yeah, I think, I found a quote the other day that, I'm trying to find it. It's by Audre Lorde. That's her name.
Mhm.
And the quote is, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. So there's that.
Yes.
I can't feel bad about it. Like, this is what I need to be doing. This is what we all need to be doing right now. I feel like I also take my lead from a lot of strong and powerful women in my life. And I feel like, a lot of people are like, I'm I'm protecting my peace. Sorry, keep it moving. Go ask somebody else. And I do feel like that kind of has been inspirational to me too, to say like I'm protecting my peace and I'm not going to feel bad about that. This is not the time to feel bad about protecting your peace. This is important because I have important work to do. I'm getting my book out in the world. I'm building community. I'm going to join a nonprofit soon. I got things to do. So I got to make sure I'm okay so I could do all these important things. So I think that is helping me a lot to not feel bad about it because it's like the long game or like a bigger cause. So yes, I'm saying no to you now because I have a big yes that's coming and I need to get ready for that big yes.
I think I think a lot of what you're talking about has to do with expectations. And you mentioned expectations twice in your answer before. One was, what's expected of me, and also what can I expect from others, right? Like how do I expect others to show up, which balances also what they're expecting from you. And it just feels like you've stopped shoulding all around, just like I should do
Yeah.
this and I should do that and I should do XYZ when it might not feel like the right thing to do.
Yes, my guiding principle for 2025 is if I ain't feeling it, I ain't doing it.
Ooh, I love it.
And it's, that's it. That's it.
And
Like that's the unapologetic part. It's like, and that's it, period.
I love that. And I think that that's so powerful. And it doesn't surprise me about you because I know you, but also I know that in your book you are writing a lot about self-care siempre.
Mhm.
And you do share very practical, real, effective practices that people can, you know, use because they've helped you and you talk about them. Are there any self-care practices specifically that you are like, this really was magical for me, or this really, really helped me?
I have a lot of them. I mean, it's everything from, what you eat, what you put in your body. To me, that's like my diet helps me a lot in terms of regulating like my mood. So that's very simple, nothing to do with the current moment, but like, it's just helpful to me to know that I'm taking care of my body. I'm making that a priority. So things like you said earlier about moving my body, like moving your body and running. I walk a lot. That's very important. I read like that just kind of takes me away a little bit from the current reality and just helps me to have another reality that enter into somebody else's world. And then, I talked about writing. I would say in the book, like if I just go back to what I write in the book. So I've shared a couple things off the top of my head, but if I go back to what I wrote in the book, it was three things. It was like develop your own individualized self-care plan based on what you know works for you, which you talked about that earlier. And then make sure you're prioritizing that self-care plan at all times, because you could like say, "Oh, I know, but the I shouldn't have caffeine. I shouldn't drink alcohol. I need to get all this sleep. I should drink my vitamins. I'm going to take magnesium at night. I'm going to stop scrolling." But if we know it all, but we don't do anything, like we allow ourselves to still go back to those places and get triggered, or not like have be our best self, then I feel like we're doing ourselves a disservice. So um I talked earlier about like getting off of like, all the socials. Um I will say something about podcasts now, because I just wrote a whole I'm on Substack. Y'all can follow me. I'm Hottie Unfiltered. And on the Substack, I had a post last week about podcasts, and I wrote about the podcasts that I love. And I'll share some of the people that I love in a minute, but I want to talk to you about the who I don't love. And I did love them. So I switched teams.
I'm
But
curious.
I'm gonna say no shade. So I'm gonna say first, I'm gonna start off saying no shade to this person. I don't want it to get back to them that I don't like them or anything like that. It just is not working for me right now. So it's Ezra Klein. Y'all might know him, y'all might like him. I'm nothing against Ezra Klein. But I noticed that when I listen to his podcast, I will feel more anxious. And there was one particular time where I was walking into town to go get coffee. I live about half hour from my coffee spot, so it was about half hour walk. I was listening to the podcast and I got into a fight as I was crossing the street with this driver. And then I got to the coffee shop and I like got into an argument with like a stranger just as I was walking in, because I was like, "Are you online?" And he was like, "Oh," and I was like, and then I just was like, "Oh my God!" Like I was like, like my something about my essence and my mood just really was like, not good.
Mhm.
And I said, that I can't, this energy is not good for me. I might go back to him at a later point. I like him. I trust I think he's, a good reporter, journalist, whatever he identifies as. But I had to cut him off for now, because I just felt like, and even I see his like in my feed, I'll see how he named the names of the podcast and like just the episode. And I'm like, ooh, triggering. Just the name of the episode
Mm.
alone is, and I know, like I said, people do this stuff for clicks and they're trying to get people to listen and read an article or listen to a episode. And I'm like, it's not for me. So right now, what I'm listening to, and this is important again, to like trust yourself and say who is working for me and who makes me feel happy and gives me hope. And Kara Swisher, if y'all know Kara Swisher, she gives me hope. I love her. She's a badass, and she's like, F this and F that, and I'm not scared, and come for me and all this other stuff. And I'm like, yes, she's the one that I need to be listening to right now, because she makes me feel good. When I'm done with her, I feel brave and strong, and I'm as big as, I don't know, big as a house. And I'm like, I could get through this. And I listen to people like Trevor Noah, who I love as well. I like Preet Bharara. If y'all don't know these names, you can
Mm.
Google them. They all have podcasts, great podcast shows. Y'all can follow me on Substack, and you can read about the shows, because I talk about them in more detail there. But yeah, I just feel like, to me, you really need, we talked about, you need to be aware of all the triggers and the how you get back. It's almost like, when you play tag when you're little and you have like home base. Is it called base?
Yep.
And it's like how you have to figure out like when it's not good, and then how do you get back to that home base? And then, like I said, develop the individualized plan based on what you know is true for you, and then just prioritize it. And sin pena, no apologies, just do it because it's the right thing to do. Because Audre Lorde told us to, because she said it's an act of self-preservation.
If Audre Lorde said it, I'm in.
Yeah.
But also, it's so interesting. I always love talking to you because it's, I've been thinking a lot about um the shoulds. And a lot of the times, you even when talking about self-care, you were like, I need to drink magnesium. I need to do this other thing. I should be going to bed at X time. I do. Again, we're shoulding, right? We're
Yeah.
like, these are
Shitting all
all
over the place.
right, all the things I should be doing. And the prioritization is so important. And I hadn't thought about it as prioritization until literally right now that you were talking about it in that way. But I was talking to my therapist a few days ago, and I was feeling guilty because I had thought I was going to do all these things and I didn't. And I was kind of getting into this funk. And the idea of opposite action was really kind of stuck in my head. Because I do, you mentioned about like the voice in your head that says you should do this and you should do that and all these things, like that gremlin. And I have that mostly on like negative self-talk and like
Mm,
the opposite action always. Like if I am thinking negative things, how about I start thinking praise that I don't give myself all the time?
yep.
Or if I don't want to go out because I just feel in a funk, how about I get up and go out? And I don't know, it felt similar in a way in the prioritization because at the moment, and you said it about the podcast, is right now they're not working for you, but at the moment you kind of know what you need. And if
Yes.
you know what you need, prioritize that.
And trust yourself.
Trust yourself, right?
I think that's an important part because I don't know that a lot, sometimes maybe even in this moment, you feel like I don't know if I trust myself because like there's so much coming at me and it's hard to know what is the right thing. But I
Right.
think that's where the grounding part is important too. Because if you're grounded, I think there's more clarity. There's more, you're clear-headed about it. You know what's important. And then you could trust yourself because it's hard to hear yourself when things are noisy,
Noise.
So even just something simple like caffeine, I gotta watch my caffeine because if I get a little too caffeinated, then I can't hear myself because I'm like like I feel like I'm bouncing off the walls. That's a very that might be
But you
a
know that, right?
personal thing, but I know that about myself. Correct.
And you can prioritize that. And that's an easy thing.
Yeah.
Which all this talk, I think the word that keeps popping into my mind is self-compassion.
Yep.
And what does that look like in practice to you? I was saying, the way I was thinking about it is I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. But how do you feel that self-compassion in practice? Particularly if you are feeling like you're either not doing enough or not showing up the way you should. Again, shoulding.
Yeah. I think that should thing is very, it's a killer. It's a mood killer. Let's see. I mentioned already that my guiding principle for the year is if I ain't feeling it, I ain't doing it. And I'll give you another story of something that happened to me recently. I joined the book club and I didn't know they were already like in the middle of reading a book and I didn't know what the book was. And I'm like, who cares? Like, whatever, let's just read. And then I saw what the book was and I like recognized the author. I'm like, where's that name? I know that name. And it turns out is like this author wrote this other book that I'm not going to mention that is like kind of anti-democratic, like for just to put it out there that way. And I was like, I'm not reading that book. Oh hell no! Like I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And I was like really proud of I'm so proud of myself because in the past I would have been like, okay, I guess I'll read it, but like I don't want to. And now I'm like, oh hell no. Like it's just things are just it's getting really easy for me to just shut things down very quickly. And I think, I'm enjoying that. That's actually, it's quite life-giving and it's very
Love that.
affirming. And it feels great to just be like, I know what is good for me. I'm not going to do the thing that I know is going to be triggering or like having me question myself or, yes, I like to be someone that has an open mind, but I don't feel like having an open mind right now. And like I said, this self-awareness, sometimes it's gonna like, I think it will ebb and flow, but it's like what you need right now. And I'm like, right now, because things are so hard, the lines I'm gonna draw are gonna be that much like more firm that I'm gonna have to stick to. So that I think has been very important in terms of protecting my peace and knowing that, there's gonna be times where I'm really excited to, call my congressperson and, maybe go to a protest, although I haven't been to a protest in a really long time, but maybe I will go to one. I feel like I'm like, that's for young people at this point, but maybe not. Maybe I'll go to a protest. I guess the point that I want to make is that when I feel really motivated and inspired, I'll probably do a lot of things. And then there's going to be times where I'm going to feel like I want to retreat and rest. And I think, so going back to the self-compassion part of the question is like, I think to just allow myself to say, yesterday I called 10 people and today I'm gonna, go for a walk and, read my book. And those two realities can coexist. And, I can have 3 days of one thing and 20 days of another or, go back and forth and like that might happen. And I'm just gonna accept it. There's a saying in Spanish, which and I don't know if all our listeners here are gonna be familiar with, but it's mañana es otro día. Mañana es otro día the saying means tomorrow is another day. And I think for me, that is a reminder that, you can hit the reset button tomorrow. Like you live your day today in the best way you can. If you're tired, you rest. If you sad, you cry. If need to be with people, you go find your people or whatever the thing is. If you don't feel like working or you can't work or you don't want to work, then you just don't. And then tomorrow you start again, you start fresh. And, it's a great reminder that the struggles and the setbacks are temporary. And I think that is a good reminder for all of this because this is not, just the way it's changing right now to this like really not good place. It'll probably keep changing again and maybe it'll change to a really good place sometime soon. And so, so I feel like the reminder that it's temporary allows me to be more compassionate with myself because I know that even the challenges that I'm personally experiencing are temporary too.
I love that. And impermanence, the constant change is one of the core Buddhist principles. So like it's a very good reminder of how
Yeah.
like nothing is gonna last forever. Everything is always changing. And that's fine. And how we view things, how we feel, particularly how we feel, will change because feelings aren't facts. I talked about self-compassion in one of my podcast episodes with this really great therapist, Esther Boykin. Highly recommend follow her. And one of the things she said, which was so simple, and I always think about is have a feelings chart because a lot of the times we don't even know how we're feeling. And
Mm,
like actually looking through like, okay, what is it that I'm really feeling right now? And going through it, and she sent me one, happy to share. And you look through it and tapping into that, you can be a lot more compassionate with yourself when you're like, you know
mhm.
what, I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling tired, or I'm feeling this way, but it's not
Yes.
gonna last forever, and feelings aren't facts. So
Yes.
I really love that answer.
Yeah, I like that whole like what am I feeling? Sometimes it reminded me of when you're going through menopause where you're like, am I hot or am I cold? I don't even know what I am. I'm something. Something's not right now, but I don't know what it is. And you can't name it. And that happens to us with the feelings too. Like it's like I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm worried. I'm worried for the future. I'm worried for our children. I don't have children personally. I have nieces and nephews, but like, you know, I worry for these young people that are looking at us and they're like, what are we supposed to do? And I'm like, I don't know, but like let's do it together. Let's figure it out. So yeah, I get it. I like that notion of just familiarizing yourself with like, is it this? Is it this? Like, what is it? What is it? And I think that helps us to figure out like, yeah, well, maybe just resting is gonna help, or maybe going for that walk is gonna help, or maybe listening to Kara Swisher is gonna help, or
Yeah,
whatever it is.
and if you're feeling meh, it might just be a day where you're feeling meh and you can do something for yourself.
Yeah.
Like both things can exist.
Mhm.
Mention people, younger people, and how they're like, what's happened? Like, what can we expect? What lessons have you learned from people that have come before you, or,
Mhm.
might be family, might be ancestors, whatever it is, uh, role models? And how do we pass on what I think is so needed, which is strength and wisdom to people who are newer to this rodeo?
Yeah. I'm gonna share a story. I so back in the summer of 2020 when George Floyd was murdered and the Black Lives Matter movement was really active, I was still in corporate and I was the head of a Latinx ERG and very invested in everything related to racial equity. Racial equity was, is, and will always be something really important to me. And that moment, I was spiraling. I'm not afraid to admit that I kind of lost a little bit of perspective for about a week or two. I was just like I just felt like I didn't know what to do. I remember the protesters because I lived in downtown Brooklyn, very close to the Brooklyn Bridge and to the Manhattan Bridge. Protesters would come near my house every day, and I remember praying that they would come back because there was a lot of like police confrontation and everything. It was a very scary moment. And I joined the call. It was like a call with like a million people. So I'm gonna about to tell you who was on that call. But the president at the time was the president that is the president right now, and uh, Obama got on a call. So Obama got on a call that I was on. That was like probably like a million other people on the call. Like, again, it wasn't like I had any like I was not on a special call. But Obama just joined. He joined this call, and they were like, "What should we do? What should we be doing?" And he was like, mellow yellow. And he was like, we've been here before, been here, done that, you know, um, we just keep doing the work, like this, nothing's changed, lots of distractions, lots of noise. Let's just keep going forward. And that sense of calm, like I will never forget what that felt like because I was like, oh my God, I thought he was going to be riled up too. And he was, I was so like shaken by that moment for like days. And he was so calm and so collected and so cool. And anyway, that was to me a very valuable lesson because I was like, wow, like he should have been way more mad than me, which it probably was mad, but he was calm and he was focused and he was peaceful. And that was just that it emanated to people that were on that call that were like, ah! And he was like, no, no, we're come, everyone's let's settle down and let's focus and how we're going to figure this out. And then like it was magic. So that was really important. I also want to give a shout out to someone that a lot of people don't know or don't talk about. You might know her, Marisela. Her name is Dolores Huerta. She is a Mexican American civil rights activist. And what a lot of people don't know, if you do know her, she worked with the like farm workers. So she was like right hand to Cesar Chavez. Her and Cesar Chavez did the work together. So she's like California based, and she was around in the like 70s, 80s type thing. In 1988, which I know for young people feels like a long time ago, but like that was the year I graduated from high school, so it wasn't that long ago. In 1988, she was beaten by police. They beat her up and they threw her in jail. And it was all for protesting on behalf of the farm workers. She wasn't, she was just protesting. And instead of backing down, instead of saying like being afraid, I would be afraid if someone beat the crap out of me and threw me in jail. Like that might do it.
Yeah.
She describes that moment as a turning point, but not in the way you would think. She said that when that beating gave her renewed sense of purpose. And she said that she realized at that moment how important her work was, that they were willing to beat the crap out of her quite publicly and throw her in jail. And the people in jail were actually really nice to her, and people sent her gifts, and she ended up in the hospital, and everybody sent her flowers. And it like, because everybody saw it and they're like, you are like, you're doing the work. You're doing what you were supposed to be doing on behalf of a community that's not being seen and heard. And so she got all her flowers from it. But she said it was an inflection point, but in the very best way. And like, I'm just inspired by that because I'm like, wow, like for someone to be that brave. Just so you know, she's still alive, bless her soul. She's like probably in her 80s or 90s right now. For those of you who don't know her story or haven't heard it, Julia Louis-Dreyfus interviewed her last year in her podcast called Wiser Than Me. And there's a whole episode on Dolores Huerta. And she's so sassy and so like she's so cool. And she talks about even as a Latina, how she had a little bit of reservation about being pro choice because as she grew up Catholic and she, was like, well, I don't know, what about the baby? And then she went all the way from being pro-life to not only being pro-choice, but seeing it as like this is a medical need. This is a woman's, health, it's a healthcare right for women. Like it's not just a right, for fun. This is part of our healthcare and how do we our reproductive rights, So anyway, it's a really interesting story. But yeah, I'm staying very inspired by our elders, people who say, this is not new. We have been here before. We need to remain steadfast and positive. We need to be brave.
Mm.
And we need to remember that it's temporary and it's gonna pass. Like this, we're not gonna be where we are right now forever. And we have to stay, we have to stay strong so we could be, be there for the fun, for the good times to celebrate getting out of this. I want to share a quick story, because I like sharing stories. I hope y'all are enjoying the stories. Don't hate if you don't, but I hope you like them. I have a Latina friend who works at a school, and this there is a family that there's a child at the school that lives in a shelter. And the mother of this child reached out to the school, and my friend is like the school secretary, and she said, I can't pick up my child today. I am afraid. I am afraid to leave the shelter because ICE is waiting outside. What should I do? And so my friend, who's the school secretary, said she went to the principal. She's like, I need permission to go drop off that child at the shelter because mom can't come. So she got permission to do it and she dropped the child off. She walked right through ICE and dropped off the child. Then she like realized it was like a Friday. So like maybe Saturday, she was like, you know what? This woman probably can't even go get groceries for her child for them to eat. So she went back to the shelter and she brought back groceries. Then, so this was my friend. Then my friend's mom, who's probably in her 80s, was like, "Oh, they don't have food here. I'm gonna make rice and beans. I want you to bring the rice and beans to the family." And I'm just so touched because my friend's mom is probably someone who didn't even graduate from high school. She didn't go to college, but she said something. She told my friend, "Tráemelo pa acá." Sorry for the slang, for those of you who speak Spanish. She said, "Bring them here. Bring them to me. If we need to have, if I need to take care of them, bring them to me." And for from where I'm sitting and for me, these women are so fearless. They're very fearless women. They're not, PhD, college graduate, thought leaders, they're just, two average women that are finding ways to be fearless in this moment and to face the moment head on and in a very brave and courageous way, I might add. And so, it reminds me of the story of like the starfish in the sand where, you're like throwing starfish in and it's like, you're not going to make a difference for everyone because it's not possible. But we can make a difference for the people that are right in front of us. And like, I'm so inspired by my friend who, her and her mom, how fearless they were in the opportunity that was presented to them. So that's what I'm learning from the elders, from the people that came before us, from the people that are still here with us. And then I think when I think about the children and the young people, I know that they're watching us. I know that they're scared. I know that they're taking cues from us. Like, they're watching. And for me, that I'm just reminded that, I don't need to be perfect. I can also, as a vulnerable leader, say, well, I'm scared too, but I'm not gonna sit around and allow like, I think a lot of people talk about this, oh, I forget what it's called when you're what is it? Something in advance. What is it? Obeying in advance. I'm not gonna obey in advance
Oh.
out of fear. I am gonna do whatever I can to resist, and I'm gonna keep using, stepping into my purpose because my purpose matters, and it matters now, I would argue, more than it ever has. So that's the behavior that I'm modeling for my nieces and nephews, for the, college students that I work with and I coach, and for anybody else who's watching me. That's how I want to show up for them.
I love the stories you just shared so much. I mean, each one of them, the Obama showing up and just that calm. I think we need that in general. And it's sometimes hard to remain calm when, that meme of the dumpster fire in the background, just the dog having coffee. That's how it feels
Yeah.
like. But we need to stay calm. Um, and then Dolores Huerta, I just wrote it down. I'm gonna listen to that podcast, and I'm really happy to see in the chat that there's a couple of schools named after
Yeah.
her, which I really, really, really
Yeah.
me.
As there should be, because
Right.
she's bomb. She's amazing.
But a lot of what you're saying too just is the power of community, right? Like it's that power of showing up for each other, of supporting each other, of being brave and doing things for each other, and the importance of having that support system. However, in a world that feels so isolating, a lot of the times, how do you build that support system when you might not feel like you have it? And to be frank, just being in this room, in this virtual room with people who are very like-minded and believe in these things feels to me as being in community. Which, by the way,
Absolutely.
if you have questions, please shoot them in the chat or feel free to raise your hand. We're a small group, so we can totally do that.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, being in community, how do we build that when the world does feel a little isolating?
Yeah. I think uh, first I want to talk about why it's important because community really is important and for a lot of reasons, it lifts us up. So, we're here and we're like, okay, maybe there's a little bit of, I'll allow myself to feel a little bit hopeful today after today's conversation, or maybe, that somebody inspires us. So we're like, wow, like they're so brave. I know, this is a live example. I got a email today from like a nonprofit, and the note came from the nonprofit's CEO, and the opening line is, "The future is optimistic." I almost fell on the floor. I was like, really? But I'm like, boy, she got pantalones to say that. Like she's got nerve. The audacity of her to say the future is optimistic, but good for her. Good for her. Because that's a reminder for us that the future is optimistic, right? So I think community allows us to rest, to just, like Maricela and I are doing the talking, y'all just get to listen and reflect and, tap out if you want and then tap back in whenever you need to. We're not always going to be in the role where we have to like, be leading, shepherding others. So like, we can step back if we need to. But, obviously it's a reminder that we're not alone. When we all came in here, Maricela and I had to say we were hopeful, but y'all are, everybody here said, we ain't not feeling
True.
it. This is
Yeah.
hard, but we're not alone. We're all on that, we're all in this together. And obviously this space and spaces like this allow us to be seen and heard. So I feel like all of that is why we need the community. And I'm part of a lot of communities. I'm grateful for the spaces that I have. And when I get to be around like-minded people, that's when I feel the most safe. And that's when I'm likely to speak more and um kind of be most authentic. So, I think that says a lot about community where you can show up unapologetically, authentically, and feel safe. And yeah, all of that is really important. But I would say, when I think about community, uh, I would say you got to find your people. Not everybody's going to be your people. Yeah, not all the communities are going to be your space. Even if they say DEI practitioner community, you could go and you could be like, yeah, this ain't it for me.
Yep.
And it's fine. That's okay. I feel like you got to find the communities that fit you and that are kind of giving you what you need in the moment. Um, and I don't think any of us want to be going through this time period alone. I would say that I had an experience fairly recent. Well, I would say maybe it was last year, and I'll preface it by saying another book that I read because I like reading. If you haven't noticed, I'm a I took a Dale Carnegie course, and his most popular book is How to Win Friends and Influence People. But he also wrote another book, and I can't remember the name of the book right now. So apologize in advance for not knowing the name of the book, but you could probably look it up. And in the book, one of the strategies, the coping mechanisms for people who worry a lot I think it was like Stop Worrying and Start Living. That might be the name of the book. But for people who worry a lot, and I'm an anxious person, I worry a lot. You think about the worst case scenario, and then you're like, oh, but like okay, I could handle the worst case scenario. If Marisela doesn't show up, that's the worst case scenario. I could do the talk by myself. Okay, I could do this. So like, and when so that's the background, the backdrop. I was in community with other Latinas following the election, and I shared in that space that my regular coping mechanism, which is to to like imagine what the worst case might be, and then be like, okay, I can handle it. In my case, thinking about this administration, because at the time the administration wasn't even here yet, it was just the election had just ended. I said, the worst case scenario is too much to bear for me. And my normal coping mechanism, it's broken. He broke my normal coping mechanism. I can't even cope anymore. Like that's to the point that I got. But I didn't realize it until I was in that meeting with those people and we were sharing. And I was like, oh, I'm like, but like for me, it's just like it's too much. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, he broke me. That's what happened. That's the best way to describe it. And anyway, I share that to say that I was grateful to have a community where I could like kind of hash that out real time and be like, this is why it feels so hard for me personally. And and then that opened it up for people to be like, yeah, me too, or but when I think about that, how about this? And that's why I do this other thing, and then, so then we all kind of were able to like show up for each other. But that was magical. And if I didn't have that space, I don't know if I ever would have gotten that far to understand why the moment was so difficult for me.
That's so powerful and so understandable. Like it really is. It's it's interesting with community because of my background and what I used to do. Like I said, I used to lead a very large community. When I hear the word community, I tend to think like this massive thing. And what I've kind of had to reframe myself in the last year and a half as I've been navigating my career transition is that community can be two people, three people, four people, and you can build whatever it is by just reaching out, like just one text. Like when I got your text this morning, I was like, "Oh," just made me so happy. And that's community, right? Like that's a support system.
Yeah.
Before I forget, Lee has a question. He says, I had never heard of the podcast Wiser Than Me before, which is, I haven't listened to it, but I've heard really good stuff. If you could recommend one podcast that fuels your positive energy, which would you pick?
Mm. Positive. Well, I like Wiser Than Me quite a bit. Wiser Than Me is just so everybody knows like the premise of it and like who is the host. The host is Julia Louis-Dreyfus. If you don't know who that is, that's Elaine from
Elaine.
Seinfeld. Yeah, or Veep. She's Selena Meyer from Veep. She's funny, she's a comedian, but that's not she's not being funny or a comedian in her role as the podcast person. She interviews women that are older than her. She herself probably, I think Julie Louis-Dreyfus might be in her 60s, so it's like people in their 70s and 80s. So it's like older women, people that I think a lot of people forget about. She has some like she's had everybody. She's had Gloria Steinem. She had who's what is the name of the Latina lady that did West Side Story?
Oh, no, blanking.
Okay, she had her. I'm trying to think who else. She's had a couple of like really interesting people. She even had, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to. I think she had Nancy Pelosi. I'm like 99% sure. I might be mixing up podcasts, but I think she had Nancy Pelosi as well. So anyway, she's had like she's a celebrity, so obviously she knows lots of people, so she's got big names. And it's a good podcast. I don't know that that's the most feel good podcast for me personally. So again, this is like you got to figure out what kind of makes you feel positive and good. I think it might be a tie between Trevor Noah and Kara Swisher for me. If you don't know Trevor Noah, he had like a whole like The Daily Show was his thing. He's awesome. He's from South Africa. He wrote a book called
Oh,
Born a Crime, which is an amazing book. If y'all
one
haven't
of
read
my
that book,
favorite.
Born a
Yeah.
crime, off the chain. He has this uncanny ability to be able to laugh at very serious things and make us laugh and like fill us with joy. And he'll be talking about something really hard, and him and his podcast, he always has like his friends and like random guests or whatever. And they're just like laughing all the time, but not in an inappropriate way, in a fun way. And I laugh out loud with them. So I really like Trevor Noah a ton. And Kara Swisher is really good. She's a journalist. She's in the tech space. So right now, because all these tech bros are like front and center, all the multi-billionaires are like running our government, she has a lot to say, and her voice really counts because she knows these people for like 20 years. She
Mhm.
wrote a book called Burn Book, A Tech Love Story, which is also a really great book if you haven't read
I
it.
haven't read it.
She's not funny, but she is fun. I don't know if funny. She's not a comedian, but she's fun.
She's fun. She has a certain wit to her. We had
Yeah,
her on a
she's
podcast
fun.
a long
And
time.
she has she has two podcasts. One is just hers. It's called On with Kara Swisher, and she just interviews a bunch of people. And then she has the one that she does with this guy named Scott Galloway, who's like a professor. He's a professor of marketing at NYU. He's an entrepreneur. He's like, yeah, yeah, might know him from other spaces, but they kind of don't see eye to eye in everything. So it is kind of an interesting podcast in that I feel like there's balance in it. But anyway, she's good. She's queer. And that I think it affects how she shows up, because she's been someone who's been marginalized and has had to hide or cover who she is in certain spaces and places, especially in the beginning, probably of her life. And so that plays a big role. But she kind of now she's like, I'm a man, like she's very much steps into the fact that she's lesbian, and she is so strong and so smart and so cool and awesome, and y'all probably all love her. She's amazing.
Yeah, she's very good. I remember having her on the Elevate podcast years ago. Um, the Trevor Noah, I want to make a note of this. If you have not read his book, which is absolutely one of my favorite books, do yourself a favor and don't read it, but get the audiobook because he narrates it. And like, I haven't listened to it, and it's on my list because I want to because apparently it's like 10 times better than the book, just for the fact that he's
I
like
bet.
doing the voices and
And
everything.
there's so many funny parts. It's
Oh
like
my
the
God,
way
it's
it
so good.
starts is like his mother, I think, throws him out of a car or something. It's like
So
this
good.
really funny thing, and he's a panic.
And there's one podcast I would recommend. There are three white women, but two of them are queer. They're married. It's called We Can Do Hard Things. It's Glennon Doyle, Abby Wambach, her wife, Abby Wambach, and Glennon's sister, Amanda. And they've had all these people. They actually had a really good episode with Kara Swisher before the election. Um, I think it's one of the most vulnerable podcasts I've ever heard. Like people be extremely vulnerable, and you know me, I go for the vulnerability.
Yeah,
And and it just feels like a warm hug sometimes. So that's a very good one, I suggest. Uh,
amazing.
any other questions? We still have like 15 minutes. If not, I can keep going. We can keep chatting. Since we do have only 15 minutes, Heidi, what do you think are some like call to actions or powerful things that even if small we can do just as we leave this call?
Hmm. Um, well, first, I want to say two things. I do want to say what the call to action is. Um, but I want to talk just a bit, if I can, about how what what role we play as we are called to take up space and use our voice and do things. I just want to like challenge us to know that we can show up in so many ways. So like, I'm a mentor. I coach college students. I feel like that's a powerful way that I'm showing up right now. Some people are activists. I'm an author. Some people are actors. Somebody's a therapist. Somebody's a street artist. Somebody's a photographer. Somebody might be writing music. Somebody might be rapping. Hello, Kendrick Lamar. Like, he came out and he was not he was being like a full-blown activist. He said so many things, he started off right from the beginning. The revolution is being televised. We picked the right time and the wrong guy. Like, boom, right out of
I
the
love it.
gate. And then there was so many other things that came after that. But like, anyway, I just want to challenge us to acknowledge and notice and recognize that how we show up in our whatever action we take is going to look different. And I think a lot of times it can look in the way that we already show up. So what I think might be different about it is that we get creative about how we use our what I call superpowers. So maybe we use them in unexpected ways. Um, I'm gonna because I got time, I'm gonna tell you one more story. So 2 years of my life, I spent over 30, I have an over 30-year career, 25 years in corporate, 5 years in nonprofit. Two of my nonprofit years I spent in Bolivia, in South America, working with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women. And I saw my job as a volunteer to be giving those women hope, showing them love, and making them feel seen and heard, which, it's like, oh, loosey goosey, what is that? But that was my job. And trust me, they appreciated it. So like I made a difference for them, talking about those starfish again. Like I leaned into my superpowers, which is yay, team, and we can do hard things and all of that. And um, I feel like I made a difference for them. And I know I did. So two things. One is I got thrown out of jail one time because we were laughing too much. The security guard came to me and said, "You got to go. I don't know. Why are you here again?" And I said, "Oh, I'm here to be with the women." They're like, "Well, you're not supposed to make them laugh. They're laughing too much. Get out." And then I came back like the next day or the next week or whatever. But like to me, that was like the biggest compliment that we were all having a little too much fun and it was time for me to go. The other thing is that once a woman told me, one of the women that I met with, we had like a little support group, which was our community. One of my earliest communities was in this prison. And she said, "We love it when you come because you help us to forget we're in jail. Like we forget we're in prison when you come." That was again a big compliment to me. I was so lucky that, I got that kind of feedback. But I just want to say that, I was a corporate person. I was, working with customers. I had no business being in this prison. I had no business bringing these women joy. I had no business like helping them to feel seen and heard. But I found a creative way to use the gifts that God has given to me to show up for these women. And anyway, so I feel like that is part of the challenge is to just be curious and excited about how you can use your gifts because now is a really exciting time to be creative. We are not all born to be activists. Some of us are going to be in the front lines. Some of us will work behind the scenes. And I think there is space for all of it, and all of it matters, and the world needs everything right now. So I wanted to kind of just preface before I give you your call to action to just say, wherever you are, that's where we need you right now. And I would say the plan that I would give you, and this is like super oversimplifying what we talked about today, but I would say create and implement your individualized self-care plan. That's number one. So we're going to make you the priority. So you're going to create your individualized self-care plan. You're going to reflect on your purpose and your gifts. Like, why are you here? Why did God put you on this earth? What are you here to do? I know that I work with underestimated and people that are overlooked, and I'm trying to make them feel loved and appreciated and valued. And so that's what I bring. And then I would encourage you, as the last call to action, to find new and creative ways to share your gifts because that's where we're finding ourselves right now. And it's kind of fun because it's like it's an open canvas. It can be anything. We can do whatever we want because we need it all.
I love your answer and your call to action. I love the story. And you talked a lot about your time there when we did my podcast together. So that was very good to hear it again. Um, but I think you said we don't all need to be activists. And I would challenge as we're kind of all activists in a
Yeah,
different
yeah.
way,
I
right?
agree
Like
with
it
you.
could be
I
with
agree with
one
you.
person, it could be we're doing do what you can with your gifts, and I love that. and I think you said this to me last week or the other day we were talking, where you're like, it is not the time for us to keep our gifts to ourselves, right? And there are
Yeah.
many ways where you can actually put that
Yeah.
out.
I think what I meant to say, and I thank you for pointing it out, we're not all going to be protesters,
Yes,
but we are all
100%.
activists in our very own way. You know, we back to what Audre Lorde said. She said, you know, it's self-preservation because we are fighting a war.
It's
We're
going to
gonna
be a long
take,
one.
yeah. So we are all activists. We're all on the front lines in that sense.
Yeah. And I do love the idea of creativity. Play is one of the biggest things, one of the best things for our brain and for our brain development, even when we're older. Um, I was telling Hadi, I've been trying to get this into my students' head as I teach innovation and design thinking, and take just a moment to just draw something, doodle something, even if you're not an artist. The fact of creating and using that side of your brain is refreshing in a way that we don't really understand it until you're immersed in it, I think. So I
Mhm.
like the idea of being creative in the ways that you can show up for people, and also using that creativity as a way to get more energy and more power.
Amen. Amen, sister.
Any other questions from the folks in the room? No? Hattie, anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here. You know, I know this is a hard time, and uh, I want to commend you for giving yourself the gift of this 1 hour, 1 hour and a half to be here with us. We hope that we inspired you, and even in a little way, to just maybe look at things a little bit differently, and you know, to feel a little bit better than you felt when you first walked in the room. Um, yeah, and my book is not going to be in the world for a couple of more months, but definitely either follow me on LinkedIn or check out my Substack if you're interested in learning more and following the journey. You know, I really feel the lessons. Yeah, I discovered that the lessons are applicable to more than what I was thinking, because I wrote the book thinking like this is how you're going to be successful in corporate America. And come to find out that a lot of the principles are just how you're going to thrive, period. How are you going to thrive wherever you find yourself, especially in the face of adversity.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, that was a little bit of a pleasant surprise for me. So now I know a different use case for the book. But it's been lovely to be here. And you know, if you want to drop your LinkedIn and we can connect, I'll drop mine as well. Marisela, please do drop yours. Marisela, thank you for being such an amazing conversation partner today. I couldn't have asked for a better compatriota. I don't know if I said that, but like compatriot. I couldn't have picked a better
I don't
person.
know.
Yeah, I couldn't have picked a better person. You have so much experience, and I love your curiosity and how vulnerable you always are, and that helps me to also share more of myself. So if you
Thank
want to drop your LinkedIn, we'll find you. Marisela, did you want to say anything in closing?
I was just gonna thank you for inviting me to do this. I needed this. Personally, I needed some of this energy. And I will say you just inspired me to go do the thing that I have not been wanting to do. Well, I've been wanting to do, but finding 10,000 excuses not to do because the world is burning and the whatever it is happening. And I'm gonna go edit my next podcast episode and get that thing out again.
Yes,
So
I'm so
thank you.
excited.
And
Thank
here's my
you.
LinkedIn. Would love to connect.
I'm so excited to hear that. Amber, did you want to close us out or say anything before we go?
So, hi, Heidi. This is Shantae.
Oh, okay. Hi,
Hi.
Shantae.
Hi.
You're not Amber.
I stepped in for Amber because she had to leave out to go get her baby. But thank you all for joining and participating. This was great. I'm glad I wish I could have jumped on at one to get the whole thing, but I'm glad I jumped in at the right time. So thank you. The recording will be sent out as well. And so if you have any questions, you just can reach out to Amber for anything related to membership or the webinars. And
Okay.
that's it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank
Take
you
care of
all for
yourself.
Have
being
a
here.
great week, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.